Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Besides the awful lateness and everything that could possibly go wrong in the tech world, we are here and ready for our Sunday live stream. Justin, how's it going?
Oh, it's a little blurry, a little out of focus here. 1 second, Josh.
Yeah, we're still not quite ready, so I'm gonna bust open the jar of cookie dough and talk about my day while Justin sets everything else up, because I just had probably the worst thing that could possibly happen go wrong. I spent probably 10 to 15 hours on a fantastic research analysis for Mr. Ken McElroy, writing some research on how Airbnb affects the housing market. I mean, I really tried super hard. I did so much math somehow when I swore to myself that I would never do it again after I left high school. And then my computer was having some issues, so I had to go to the store and to the Apple store and get all my data just wiped so the speed on my internet would go faster. So of course these documents all got evaporated and I have to redo them now. So it's going to be a long night for myself. And Justin, I know that you had a hard time and broke the fast, so nothing could be going right.
Oh, no. Like I said, it was a 4-day or so. We'll be jumping back on that train in a little bit here. Where was I going?
I think you did some. I mean, I have just been suicidal, but besides that, it seems like there's a bunch of keynotes here that you're about to go into a nice little presentation. Maybe we can do a video on that too.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. So first off, how's the audio? Is the audio coming through okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so the camera that I use to stream, I have it set so it does a fixed focal length, which means I have to be a set distance from the camera. And there was another video that we were working on where I was further back. I haven't had time to adjust it yet. So like the keyboard's like way the blank. So I can't it's going to get weird for me to try to drive this. Anyways,
Justin, what do you want to talk about? It looked like a balance sheet expansion and kind of this whole slideshow. I don't need to go into that while I sob and bust open the cookie.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to things. So a few comments. So Jay basically says right here, hey guys, I have a few things I would like and appreciate your thoughts on. I think most of this will be old ground, but there are things I don't understand fully. First, you guys talk about balance sheet expansion. Can you talk a bit more about what you mean by that? Are these examples pump stock, crypto prices of assets owned, take debt to finance new assets? Second, swaps. Can you share your understanding of the mechanics and the risk of swaps risk swapping that occurs with swaps? My understanding is that, what does it say? A hedge fund has a short position, They enter a swap agreement with another entity, lender, big bank, prime, whatever. The hedge fund pays periodic premiums to the other entity to carry this position and its risk on its books. If the position blows up, the entity that is holding the position absorbs the risk, correct? Is there anything else to it that I'm missing? The position were transferred back to the or does it go as long as the hedge fund continues to pay the premiums? Okay, so going into that, Jay, here's how I think of it. So just so you know, like my background is like I'm formally trained as an accountant, but my little quip is that in my defense, I was never a very good accountant, so don't hold it against me. Let's maybe start with this or whatever, right? So when you look at a balance sheet, not to bore people with rambling on about it, but most balance sheets, there's the left side and there's the right side. You've got the asset side over here on the green side and the liability side over here on the right side. Now, there's a very important distinction here in that this is for any non-bank entity. Or let me say this a slightly different way. For any entity that doesn't issue its own dollar or euro or yen or IOU shares of stock or whatever, right? This would apply to us. This would be like you, this would be like Josh, this would be like, the companies you do business with or whatever, right? Okay, so just kind of keep in mind that for the normal person, good side, the good side of the balance sheet is the left-hand side, and the bad side of the balance sheet is the right-hand side. But for banks, everything's inverted. The rules still apply, but everything's backwards. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if I make this go away, remove. Let me see if I can make this bigger so people can read it. There we go. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Josh. Okay. So this is what we were looking at before. On the right-hand side, you have non-bank balance sheets. And so you would put assets. So this would be like cash in your account. Maybe if you own your home, your car, or whatever, right? If you're a business, it would be like your operating capital. It would be like maybe your plants that you own, et cetera, just stuff like that. And on the right-hand side, you have liabilities. And so what this is this is stuff that like you would owe, like bills you have to pay. Maybe you've got a mortgage or whatever, right? But there's two sides of this. The red side is kind of like the bad liability side, or these are obligations you have to other people. And then there's this purple side, which is owner's equity. Owner's equity is just a fancy way of saying whatever money you put into something. So let's say like you start a business, Jay, and you put in, I don't know, like $20,000 or whatever, right? Well, $20,000 would be your owner's equity. Then you have $20,000 on the other side, and let's say your asset side. Then let's say you buy a machine for $10,000, whatever, right? Or you buy a machine for $100,000, and you have like a $100,000 note, but you have a $10,000 down payment, or whatever, right? So you would have 10,000 less in cash, 90 or whatever it works out to, 90,000 of liabilities, and 10,000, or the machine would go over here. I'm sorry, that's not very clear, but this is just kind of a very, very, very broad picture ways to think of it. So again, for the personal side, your assets for a non-bank entity will equal the liabilities and the owner's equity for the other side. Banks, and this is where it's going to get back into GME here in just a second, is the exact opposite. Because from the banking side, or from the bank's perspective, or for let's say a prime broker's perspective, the loans that they make are the assets on their balance sheet. But the problem is when you look at non-bank balance sheets, this might be maybe an easy way of understanding it. From a personal side or whatever, right? The more assets you have, like the more homes you have as a business, the more factories you have, the more widgets you make or whatever, right? The more you grow your asset base, so this bottom green triangle increases, the easier it is to support the liabilities that you've borrowed, okay? So like, let's say you've got one mortgage on your home, but you buy in cash, 10 other homes or whatever, right? Well, it's true, you have a mortgage on one of your homes, but you have all these other assets that you brought onto your balance sheet. And so you're actually looking quite pretty in that regard. You've got this very strong basis. Josh, what happened to that?
They all just disappeared.
Jesus Christ. So just a side note, I fucking hate StreamYard with a passion.
Yeah, I think when you were going to try and pull those back up. Honestly, I want to end this right now, shoot myself, and then just wait to be drilled along by the police, and then we can kind of maintain this next week. But I think we'll carry on for a few minutes. And Jay, we'll just make a full video on that because it wasn't too clear. Justin will probably need to concise himself a little bit, and I'm going to give him a lot of pushback on that. But I agree with just about everything that he is saying. Jay, so we'll do a full video on that because I mean Justin did a good job with all his fancy schmancy slideshows.
Yeah, Jay, so think of it like this or whatever, right? So we talk about balance sheet expansion and balance sheet constraints or whatever, right? If you look at like the banking system, what makes the banking system work, whenever they talk about the banking system freezing up, like when you take $100 and put it in Chase or your bank with Bank of America, or if you're up in Canada, put it in your RBC or your Scotia or your BMO account or whatever, right? You actually don't have cash anymore. You actually have an IOU from a bank or whatever, right? Now, the thing is that like CIBC will honor, BMO's, Canadian dollar IOUs, just as Chase will honor Wells Fargo's, dollar IOUs or whatever, right? And so the point is that like you have this IOU, you have this stand-in, for the underlying real asset or whatever, right? And so this is what allows. This is the fundamental thing of what lets the balance sheet expand, because as long as banks are willing to say, okay, well, listen, we're not going to demand a collateral call from a corresponding bank or whatever, right? We're not going to demand like bank reserves or some underlying asset be sent over or whatever, right? The balance sheet will grow and grow and grow because the IOU receivables, from say another bank or whatever, right, will just continue to increase. So if you take this back to GME land, and I really don't know if this is being concise or helping or just confusing people, but I'm doing my best there. It's hard to do in real time. When you have, and again, as I understand it, like when you have a share is a share is a share, and this took me a long time to get over. But then the question becomes like, where is the locate for the share? Like, who actually is on the hook for delivering the share? And I guess the ultimate question is that the DTCC is on the ultimate hook for delivering the share. But before you get to there, there's a few other intermediaries that go through in this regard. So if you have someone like a Citadel, who I think is who I assume is the designated market maker for the equity side of GME or whatever, right? Citadel has the ability to say, like, listen, we will guarantee the IOU for the time being, and there's certain rules and limits that are placed upon that before Citadel has to go out into the market and actually force buy or force find an IOU, or just anyone who's short. So what that means is in the interim, let's say it's like 6 days, just pulling a number out of my ass here. Well, if it's 6 days, whatever, right? And if Citadel's issued IOUs for, I don't know, 500,000 shares of GME or whatever, right? That actually goes onto their balance sheet. And so the Citadel balance sheet would have a line to the effect of securities promise, or securities deliverable but not yet bought, or it will be something like that or whatever, right? And the larger that number gets, that's the expansion of the balance sheet. And the reason they can do that is that they're trusted by the other entities in the system. Now, when Citadel has to start going back in and force buying, that's when you see some things going through. And ideally, if they're doing their job right, they would be reducing volatility, and think what happened last week or whatever, right? So what Citadel would ideally want to do in this situation is that for, let's say, an IOU that they're short, they would want to match it with a long, let me say, yeah, so they're short, they want to match it with a long. But what they can do is they can go across time. And so if they, let's say, if they sold an IOU share for, 150, but if they can satisfy it with something that they bought for, let's say, like, 110 or whatever, right? Then they're making money in the back, or they're making a ton of money. They're constraining and reducing the size of the balance sheet because they're finding a locator, they're finding, the deliverable for the share that they promised, and they're doing it at a price that's not as that's less than what was less with what they originally promised it at. That's not helping at all, is it, Josh?
Probably not. I wasn't following, not only because I wasn't listening to you, but also because I wasn't following. It wasn't easy to follow, that is for sure. So I'm just gonna ramble on for a few minutes, then maybe we call us quits and run it back soon or something, like, because I have to get this work done. Like I needed it done Friday because they're gonna record the win video like tomorrow. So I need to spend all night like redoing this research.
Okay. Anyways,
but I will actually give some real value. So we'll redo that whole video because I think that will be really important. And you had some good graphics, but I think we do need to articulate our point much better. So everyone needs to check out I think the greatest podcast of all time, and 100 times better than ours will ever be. At least it's the most, my second most enjoyable one. My first is the Market Huddle, but this one, old Inside Baseball with Old Chestnut. This was a guy who was I've actually talked to him quite a bit. He was a hedge fund guy at Greenwich Capital, where he managed, about $100 billion with when he was leveraged up. A lot of fucking money. And he's actually done rehypothecation. So Justin, you're going to get a kick out of this. So in one of the episodes, he was describing the process as to how he would rehypothecate. But if I asked him, he wouldn't understand that word because that's kind of the new layman's term that we've kind of developed. But he was saying back in the day before QE was a thing, the Fed would come in and still buy bonds once in a while, but they wouldn't call it QE. They would just they would call it something else. So they would say, hey, we are looking for like a 2, a 5, and a 10-year, and then someone's going to give them a bid. And the crazy thing was you didn't actually have to give the Fed the 2, 5, and 10-year bond. You could give them the proportionate collateral for that bond and say, hey, I'll pay you that within the next 30 days. Here's the upfront collateral, and then I'll fill your order within the next 30 days. So then what he would do is he would put up the collateral, let's say $1 billion to the Fed, and he needed to execute. He needed to get $1 billion worth of the bonds that they wanted to buy within that 30 days, fill the order, and then get his collateral back. So he would go into the market and give somebody collateral. They get the bonds, they trade the bonds. Then they take the bonds and they give it to the Fed and take their collateral back, rehypothecate those, go back and give it to the other counterparty that they were working with. Like some real mischief that they were actually doing this rehypothecation without actually knowing it. But just these were the kind of arbitrage shenanigans that were going on, and it's going on at a much larger scale today. Because that was back, I'm pretty sure he retired like a few decades ago. Dude, he's an old timer.
Josh, ask him about what was that dude's name. So it goes back, like one of the things I keep bringing up if you on Pi-Fi stream, I feel like I'm the only one that talks about it. Everyone hates when I bring it up, is LTCM, long-term capital management. And
he was around back then. I'm actually going to be on the call with one of his buddies.
But here's the weird thing about LTCM. So LTCM was what grew out when J.M. Merriweather was fired from Salomon Brothers or whatever, right? But here's the interesting thing. Like, Josh, what is that cat's name? Gammon's talked about him too. He's like, no one could figure out his scheme. He was the one that was fired. Remember the one that cornered, it was on the run treasury. Yeah, I think it was on the run treasuries. It wasn't Posner. Who the fuck was that guy's name? Okay, well, whatever. You know who I'm talking about, right, Josh?
Trader Paul Mozar.
Yes, that's the dude. Again, so here's the weird thing from all this. So it all started at Solomon, and this is mid 90s or whatever, right here or whatever, right? Anyways, when he was cornering the bond market or whatever, right? I suspect there was something going on too where he was rehypothecating. Yeah.
I actually have some inside. This guy knows him. Like
Oh,
I tried to get you to listen to it one time, but I don't think he did because he was talking about that exact subject.
did
And
you?
yeah, oh, I've sent you every single one of these, and every single time, like, oh yeah, it's on the watch list. I'll give it a listen. It's the same thing whenever you send me anything. So,
Yeah, that works, isn't it?
uh,
Okay, okay. Well, anyway, so
so I'll
the
resend it to you. But basically, he knew, he saw what was going on when, like, during this time when Solomon Brothers was cornering the market for treasuries where they were buying absolutely everything, and he was saying, he didn't, he was talking about it, but it was going over my head. Because when you go super deep into bonds, into like derivative swaps, he was talking really deep into the plumbing that I didn't really understand to the highest degree. So that is something that I actually, like, if we can formulate a intelligent email, I would send it to him. But that would take your head, not mine.
Okay, gotcha. So, anyways, let's see. Yeah, as far as that, like that's as far as the balance
Actually,
sheet
I would
expansion
say I would go a step further, and I would say this will be the worst stream ever, and
Oh yeah.
exactly.
So in that case, you just want to completely blow it out, so that way you set the bar so low, it's very easy
Yeah,
to succeed going forward.
it can only
Um,
get better. Well, at least I'd hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So this actually I can comment on or whatever right here. So the answer is no, but it's not for the reasons that I think you think that it is. And again, I would go back to LTCM when LTCM blew up. And so what's going to kick this off? So there's two concepts you want to think here. Number one is be careful what you wish for. Like my argument is, and my expectation is I fully expect GME and probably others to squeeze. This is the answer that people want to hear. What's going to kick off the squeeze? It's going to be something stupid. And when I say something stupid, here's the thing. Like Gurk accurately notes that, they've changed the rules. They've reduced margin requirements. They've put in more contingencies. All this is correct. 100% agree. They've stacked the deck in their favor. But the problem is that in stacking the deck in the favor, they've added complexity to the system. When you add complexity to the system, you run into an inherent problem because you can only get so complex before you have this concept called emergent properties. Read Rickards if you want to know, or the book 3 in his series if you want to know the inside scoop on that. But when I say something stupid is going to blow this up, what'll happen is that there'll be some unforeseen interaction between one of these contingencies interacting with another one of these contingencies. And again, like in hindsight, we'll call it stupid. Like we should be able to see it right now, but we're not going to be able to do it. It won't be visible after the fact. In 98, when LTCM blew up, it was Russia defaulting on their own internal bonds. In 2008, it was Lehman defaulting, or whatever, right? That created, this cascading chain of events that basically threatened to freeze up the entire system. And so, to answer your question, what would cause what would blow up a market maker and trigger the thing to start? What it would be, it's going to look very similar to something like this. There is going to be something that's not anticipated, something that assumed could never happen. And it's going to happen at just the right moment, at just the right time. And in doing so, it's going to throw a monkey wrench into all of these sophisticated algorithms, all of these sophisticated schemes, and essentially all the stuff that they put in to screw over retail. It's going to double back and screw over them. So that is one of the reasons, and probably the main reason, why I'm very convinced that MOS will eventually happen. Now, let me be really clear. Just because something is inevitable doesn't mean that it's imminent. And I think this is where Gurk is very, very wise and very correct to mention that in the interim, until it has happened, it hasn't happened. So until it hasn't happened, learn how the volatility cycles work. Do your best to try to understand this stuff. And even if you can't understand it, like myself, whatever, I at least can try to wrap my mind around it. And I can at least say, okay, well, listen, how can I trade volatility in the interim, to make some bank or whatever, right? So I think that's the very appropriate strategy.
Have you started opening your position for next week?
Oh yeah, I never closed it after June. See, this is the real estate guy.
That's when everyone, myself included, was calling you an absolute retard for not doing anything. I closed everything after June. Then I repositioned Thursday and Friday. I picked up a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I picked up a pretty heavy position because implied volatility remained pretty low. So the option pricing still was not too bad.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the first thing. But and here's the second thing that you've got to remember with MOS, going through or whatever, right? Like it's going to get to ridiculous levels. Like I am pretty confident about that. But it's not going to be a straight shot to get there. Like there is going to be, like you think it's bad right now, wondering, oh my God, are we going to have, are we going to have an OPEX run or whatever, right? Wait till the shit starts running, and then it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, what's the government going to do? Is the government going to cancel the option chain? Is the OCC just going to boof everyone?
Well,
is the SEC ever going to
first? But Here, Perk. I actually have some good info that also came from that Inside Base Nut with Old Chestnut podcast. Is in every other squeeze, the hedge fund, it has been a hedge fund that got squeezed. I'm not sure in history where money market has been squeezed. Something that Citadel and money and market makers do a lot are you're short volatility a lot of the time, and on a lot of stocks you usually make up for it by being long a ton of other stocks, but there's a chance when you're short volatility that it blows up massively against you. And he was using the example of Citadel because someone was actually, this was on the most recent episode of the Market Huddle where Kevin Muir was interviewing Market Zacks. That just happened a few days ago. But he was basically saying, short sellers, short volatility guys, like they're missing the entire picture because you're just trying to pick little pieces and you never get the whole pie. And Kevin said to him, well, Citadel's been extremely successful with doing this by Mr. Griffin has he's making the markets and getting a pretty nice spread everywhere, but he seems to be pretty successful going short volatility most of the time. And he was saying, yes, for now, but look back at LTCM, these perfect algorithms don't always end so perfectly. And he is definitely
and what ends it is something they assume that isn't true. Like that is the kernel of truth that's going to screw them over. There will be some assumption or set of assumptions they've made that seem perfectly reasonable, but in practice blow up. That's what works in the deep.
All right, Justin, you want to end it here? I mean, I'd love to keep talking to you fellas, but I mean, I got fucked and now I need to go do some work, which Justin is not too equipped for. Or Justin, you can keep talking to people. I mean, this might be a delete type of video anyway, because it was terrible. I would appreciate if everyone could drop a dislike on this to let you not to recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'll stay on for just a little longer. So
I think that we probably missed some questions too. So some SPY puts after Kramer rings the bell tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen, but
is he ringing the bell tomorrow? Like seriously?
Yeah, like seriously. Bullish for GME. It's gonna. I don't know. I actually, I have a theory about Kramer that I think he's like a spy that is actually one of the greatest traders ever, and he reverses everything that he actually thinks, because it would be so difficult for someone to be wrong with such catastrophic accuracy.
Yeah. Here's one real quick. MOAS this month. So Yos, whatever it is. Like I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next week. I don't know if you're going to see MOAS in that sense, but I'm very curious to see if we see a very quick run up or whatever. Right. I'm certainly positioned, for that. Yeah, Jay, I just see that right there. Thoughts on OPEX this week?
I'm getting pretty positioned. I'm hoping Monday that I get another buying opportunity. I didn't leverage myself quite a bit for this OPEX like I did the last, just because of the movement that we saw this week. I didn't know if there was going to be a rug pull. We did get some really good price movement to the downside, which allowed for a lot of buying for myself. But I would look Monday to see if I can open any more positions. But other than that, I am pretty prepared for OPEX going into it. I'm pretty sure I have quite a few at the monies. I go up at least 3 months for all of them, and then I have some 950s just as a volatility play. That was pretty much all I was doing.
Yeah. And the 950s, soon to be 237.50s. so
yeah,
that's gonna be a change. So,
all right, Justin. Justin, I actually have a story for you, because we'll probably delete this video anyway. So yesterday, me and my mom, we were walking the dogs, and this massive pit bull was in this guy's lawn, and it escaped. And my Max, there's a small guy. It ran over it, fucking jumped on him, was attacking the shit out of him. Like, he had him on the floor, like biting him. So I was trying to get the fucking dog off. The owner came out, he picked him up. I mean, my mom was screaming. It was a humongous chaotic scene, but my little dog's fine. He's doing okay.
Good for him. Good for him. Hold on a second. So what do you think the split div will be irrelevant to?
Here, I'll read it fully. So, Justin, do you think the split dividend will be irrelevant to us? Why was I under the false understanding that it would be beneficial?
So again, that's more of a market mechanics question, and as I'm fond of saying, I would say, you probably want to check out, what PieFi's saying on that regard. But like from what I've watched and seen on that front, I think the question mark that nobody quite knows what's going to happen is that if you're an ETF that's provided synthetic liquidity or whatever, right? And per your prospectus or the various rules that govern the ETF, if you have to receive the dividend as in kind, in other words, you can't take cash in lieu of the dividend, you have to take shares, then that might be a tie-in right there. I'll put a post on Reddit when I get around to it later today
Well,
with kind of like a recap.
what is your Reddit, Justin? I'm not on the Reddit. So
it's yeah, something like that. Like it's just I don't particularly care much for Reddit, but whatever, it is what it is. But if you go back, there's a couple times where PieFi was talking.
What website do you care for?
Anyways, where was I going with my line of thinking? So what I was going to say was there's a few clips where PieFi was talking about Tesla after the Tesla split, like kind of how that played out. And so and again, like this is so outside my wheelhouse, whatever, right? But the way I'm kind of thinking right now is to treat, if we have a run, treat it as like, a quarterly or monthly OPEX run. So that means, once things go green, especially if you've got like 950s for like a volatility play, you keep your risk really tightly managed on that. As soon as they go green or whatever, right? Or even before probably is what you should be doing. You put on some trailing stops just in case there's a rug that pulls up, you write it up, and then you kind of see what happens. That's kind of my play.
I actually really want to answer this next question. Is direct registering shares the thing they never factored for? I'm going to go on a limb and say maybe. And the reason is because right now it's actually helping them a lot because they're pretty much putting on these weird volatility positions, which is making them massive amounts of money in such compact amounts of time. And a direct registering your shares is actually amplifying that for them. And we can kind of see that, hence the cycles. Volatility blows up because less shares are available. Therefore, the pool that there is to kind of go in, and when the buy orders come in, it blows up volatility, and that blows up their value of their entropy swaps, having them make a lot of money. Then they rug pull, bring us back down. It's been very profitable, but there is a chance that those volatility positions could blow up out of this world. And if that happens and they lose control of volatility, then that is how something just gets absolutely chaotic. And the more direct registering shares comes in, I think the bigger these cycles could potentially get.
Yeah, and like what I would say on that front is that like I do not think DRSing will cause MOAS to the extent that like Super Stonk or whatever, right, thinks that it will. So in that case, no.
But I think it could be. I did not think that anyone was thinking, oh, direct registering a share is a possibility, and because that is happening, I think it could be one of those emergent properties that you always talk about.
Yeah, and so like this is what I would say is like what I think the DRS angle is with some other things. It's going to be something stupid and something that nobody ever thought about. So for example, let's say people start DRSing their shares or whatever, right? So all of a sudden, the size of, I think that would decrease the size of the float, right, Josh? That's fundamentally the reason. Or if you DRS shares, whatever, the people who want to do shenanigans on GME will have a very clear idea of just how many shares there are out there that they can basically screw around with. But then let's say you have that combined with, let's say, a stock or the stock dividend, and then you have that combined with the way the OCC is treating the stock dividend, basically just a split. Divide your strike price by 4 and multiply the contracts you hold by 4, whatever, right, versus actually opening up a new chain. And if that happens, and suddenly options become more affordable, because now if you want to exercise options, you need maybe, let's say, $4,000 as opposed to 16 to, 25,000 or whatever to exercise a contract. Well, then all of a sudden you might have more pressure that's put on, what is it, Wolverine, who's the option market maker. And so you might have like this really weird combination of a lot of little things. Like imagine like, little pieces of snow that fall on a snowpack or whatever, right? They build up the potential for an avalanche. And then there's not, let's say, maybe like a singular event that starts the avalanche or like a big thing, but rather it's just the right snowflake that hits the snowpack at the right time, at the right place, at the right angle, with all the other snowflakes that have accumulated that starts, the snowball, which then turns into the torrent, which then turns into the avalanche, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how I see it. It's like it's the weirdness that will arise out of this in a way that nobody thought it would interact with the other components that go into it.
Why do you think Ryan Cohen is hesitant to issue the NFT dividend? I would say because there's a lot of lawyering that needs to be going on, and I don't see a lot of benefit for them. Like the benefit to downside risk is highly asymmetrical, opposing their favor.
Yeah, and like what I would say for that one is that like when you operate as I assume co and can at this level, like they will have access to probably more data than we have. And so just because they haven't done it yet, or as I'm fond of saying, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And so like just because they haven't done something, they haven't commented on something, doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't, thought about it, they have plans in the work. And also remember this too, like if MOAS actually does kick off, like it's not kicking off in the background, it's kicking off in the very grim and grisly backdrop of a lot of people like losing the retirement, losing their life savings. Like, look, I mean, people think that, you buy your Lambos or buy your Giga Yachts, whatever, right? And I'm certainly guilty of that. But there will be people, like, this is not an embellishment. This is not hyperbole. There will be people who will put a gun in their mouth and blow their brains across the drapes because they think they have lost everything due to, the feckless and the gross irresponsibility of the people who are allowed, an impossible shortage to be accumulated in the first place. So, I mean, like, it's...
I honestly, I don't think it's realistic for them to issue an NFT dividend. I mean, what about all the boomers that would have to kind of figure that out? Like for me, it does not seem realistic at the point of view where we are with the current understanding of technology. I mean,
no. Whoa. It doesn't seem realistic based upon the understandings of what we believe is, within the realm of possibility. But the thing is that there might be another option that is complete within the realm of possibility that we just don't know. It's like, I mean, if you go back to, let's say, when we were using trains, to crisscross, before we invented, flying, whatever, right? It's like, well, maybe we can get a train that can go from, New York to Los Angeles in like 5 hours or whatever, right? And the answer is, well, no, we can do it, but it's not going to be a train, it's going to be a plane or whatever, right? But someone at the past wouldn't understand that. You mean like a really large bird that can fly fast? Like just because we can't envision it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to exist or happen.
I'm actually surprised with the increase in DRS that has kept a steady pace. What happens as the total shares of DRS gets close to the float? I mean, that is
what more liquid, right? I mean, fundamentally, it's what happens, right?
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Oh, it just gets more liquid, right?
Well, it's going to get more liquid, but I think what happens if they actually get the entire float direct registered? I mean, under that circumstance, then we really could see a blow up.
Yeah, well, actually, probably GME would probably just issue more shares at that point in time. And that's what I'm saying too. Is like GME, like they cannot be seen as being an actor in the short squeeze or whatever. Right?
Yeah, I don't think they would issue in more shares would be seen as a bad actor if your entire float's direct registered.
Yeah.
So I think under that circumstance we could start to see a MOAS style event. But what is the probability of that happening? And at least, I mean, maybe if we go down 5 years down the line. Who knows though? What causes the volatility position to blow up? I would say it's not going to be something in GME land. I would say it's going to be something in the stock market land, like a liquidity crisis where
bonds
restraints.
Yeah, no, it'll probably start in bonds. It'll probably start on the debt market and then blow up.
That's where kind of everything starts. It will be credit, and then a firm starts to have some liquidity issues. I've also because this guy, like if you want to learn, if you want actionable trade advice, do not go to Inside Basenet with Old Chestnut. If you just want to hear stories of a guy who's lived a incredible hedge fund life, and you can kind of just pull data from that to influence your behaviors, that is what is incredible about the podcast. But he's said quite a few stories of Warren Buffett, where anyone that wants to work with him, he has done a lot of shady shit that is seems as highly illegal under a lot of liquidity crises. And the thing is, like he'll take on deals that seem wildly unreal. And I see Justin smiling because there's quite a few theories about them right now. And I didn't buy any of them because he seems like this sweet grandpa, but he was saying he's much more like a
loan shark.
Yeah, I mean, a loan shark like you have never seen before, because you can structure deals in these derivative swaps with a firm that's going bust that is wildly out of your favor. But of course, something could go wrong that blows up to a proportion where you couldn't even believe. I don't even think I answered that, but I think it would be where if a firm starts to go bust, that would cause a volatility position to blow up.
Yeah, and probably the answer to that question is like what it would look like is you probably have the rate of change blowing up and exponentially increasing. So it'd be, I guess, the second order derivative. Oh, damn, it's like this just shows you how ignorant I am with this stuff. But like I would say the rate of change is the rate of change going up at a level that is further increasing. That's going to put a lot of stress on the system. And isn't that what happened back in January too of 2021? Fundamentally, it was the Volga-Vana squeeze. So yeah, I think the way. Yeah,
but it's harder to get a Volga-Vana squeeze now under new regulation. Do you think this will be the first of multiple splits? This one to float to 300 million and the $1 billion? It could be possible. Yeah. Do I think it's likely? I don't know what policy will be made in the future, but it's possible for sure.
Yeah.
Will you upload updates this week? Depending on what's going on. I mean, I do think we're definitely going to do that balance sheet video. If a lot's going on in GME land, absolutely. If there's a lot going on the macro landscape, we'll definitely do videos on that. It's really just whatever we see going on that we want to talk about at the time. We never really have a set plan. But if OPEX is happening, we'll definitely talk about how we're managing our positions going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Justin, we out of here.
Yeah, we're out here. Guys, we'll see you next week. Same great time, same great place.
Hopefully,
everyone had to endure the stream.
The live streams have been pretty shitty, so let us know how terrible they are. Do you want to delete this video, Justin?
Whatever.
How about we do rock, paper, scissors? If I win, we delete it. If you win, we'll keep it up.
It took as a fan. Wait, what are you doing?
If I win rock, paper, scissors, I'm gonna delete the video. If you win, then I'll keep it up.
Okay, so do you go in 3? Is that how it works?
No, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. All right.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 is when you go. Okay, you ready?
Rock,
paper, scissors, shoot. Go.
Oh, rock, paper.
Whoa, hold on.
That's a tie. Rock, paper, scissors. Motherfucker.
Go. Yeah, just delete it. Be done with it. So.
All right. No, I'll keep it up. I'll keep it up. Rock, paper, scissors. Josh shaves his hair. That is a high stakes game that I am not willing for.
That's what's going to trigger most, by the way. Josh is very selfish for not shaving his head.
Maybe at some point in the next year, I'll consider it. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. Leave a dislike because this video sucked.
Yeah.